Hi everyone. Thank you so much for attending our event today, Storytelling to Undo Stigma with Medical Herstory X Safely. We have an amazing lineup today of speakers who will be sharing their stories and experiences all around sexual health. So a little bit about your host today, Medical Herstory X Safely. My name is Tori Ford. I'm the founder of Medical Herstory. We are an award-winning international youth-led not-for-profit on a mission to eliminate sexism, shame, and stigma from health experiences. We are dedicated to advancing gender health equity through medical education, patient advocacy, undoing stigma, and of course, storytelling. We run an online publication where you can share your own story or read those of others. We run workshops on everything from how to write your own narrative and to how to advocate for yourself in healthcare or how to dismantle gender bias. We also run amazing online events like these. So if you have a story to share, we would love to hear it. If you want to follow us on any social media, we're all over it at Medical Herstory, even on TikTok, or you can find more out about us at medicalherstory.com. So I'll now turn it over to Bridget, who will be introducing our amazing partner, Safely.
Hi guys, thank you so much for joining us today. One thing that I'm really passionate about as a lifelong storyteller is community coming together to tell their truth and speak their stories. I think it's a really powerful way to not only lift us up and kind of highlight our experiences, but unite us on a really deep level and help us learn more about not just each other, but kind of experiences that we may not have a personal relation to. So I'm really excited to have all of you joining us today. I'm the director of partnerships and communications over here at Safely. Safely is an app. It lets you show your verified STI status privately on your phone and is one of the easiest and least expensive ways to get tested and treated. With Safely, you can download the app for free and you can import your STI results from wherever you were last tested. So if you got your test at the gyno, at the local clinic, you can literally go into our app, like type in your doctor's name and import the results. So you can do that for free, or if you need to get tested, you can use your insurance, which is generally for free, depends on what your insurance rules are, or you can get tested through us for $99 for a 6-panel test. It is what we want to do basically with Safely is end the spread and stigma of STIs and make healthcare accessible and affordable for everyone and really empower people to take control of their sexual health. STDs are on the rise for the 6th year in a row. And even during the pandemic, they're actually kind of, I don't say worse, but the testing has been largely unavailable because a lot of clinics have been converted to COVID testing clinics and care facilities. So we're anticipating having a little bit of a crisis after everything gets back to normal. So it's really important to take care of your sexual health, and we want to empower you to do that at the beginning to encourage your partners to get tested too. We basically are online, and I think all of our Instagram is at the Safe app as well as Twitter, and then on Facebook we're at the Safely app. Please give us a follow, send us any DMs if you're interested in joining this. I want to try to make it a regular monthly thing, and we'll have themes, etc. So please shoot us any questions, comments, ideas. The DMs are always open and we'd love to hear them. I'm really excited to hear everyone's stories. Tori, take it away.
Awesome. So as we saw earlier in sort of our chat, everyone's tuning in from all over the world. But we do want to recognize the unceded territory in which Medical Herstory is primarily situated, which is Tiohtià:ke. Tiohtià:ke has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous people, including the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, Huron-Wendat, and Abenaki nations. Medical Herstory recognizes and respects these people as the traditional stewards of the land, as well as recognizing that today this meeting place is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across Turtle Island. We also wish to acknowledge the land of the Tongva as the traditional caretakers of the land in which Safely is situated. Medical Herstory and Safely are dedicated to being anti-racist and anti-colonial in our mission to undo stigma. We cannot begin to discuss sexual or reproductive health without recognizing the role of colonialism and white supremacy in the continued mistreatment of Indigenous people, Black women, people of color, and LGBTQIA2S+ individuals. So today you're going to be hearing from some amazing speakers from all over the world, and I will introduce their stories in more depth and more about them before each of them speaks. But here's a sneak peek of who we have in store today. I encourage you to check out their social media at We Are Ungirls, Endoqueer, Xtina Del Valle, The Nurse Note, Shana Singleton, and Queens of Eve. And again, just a final content note before we get started, that today's going to be full of really open and honest conversations. Topics include things that might be vulnerable, such as sexuality, medical mistreatment, or pain. And these might be triggering for some of you, especially if they hit close to home. So you just want to hold some space for that. And we encourage you all to practice self-care and take breaks as needed, as well as being kind to yourself as we're all working together to undo these stigmas. And just before I leave, before I leave the slides, a few Zoom rules. So please keep yourselves muted throughout this to respect the speakers and their stories. We're going to have an audience question and answer period at the end. So if you're feeling strongly, you can save your questions till then. But we do have an interactive Google Doc, which I'll have one of our amazing volunteers drop in the chat now, where you can put any feedback or comments, and feel free to also engage in the chat throughout this to let your speakers know what you think. As well, the closed captions should be available. I will double check that if they are not, so for accessibility. And oh, that's actually for conclusions. I will stop screen sharing now and introduce your first speaker. I just want to make sure our closed captions are on. Okay, I don't think they were on before, so apologies, but they are now. So to kick off our amazing lineup, I want to introduce Kat Lygate and her story, What Not to Wear When You Are Going to the Sex Clinic. Kat from Ungirl is super fascinated by sexuality and what it means to be a sexually liberated woman. She tries to empower all women to explore their sexuality and their own desires and pleasure through her educational and relatable posts, as I'm sure you've all seen her on Instagram or TikTok before. She's a big advocate for self-pleasure and using it to develop a deeper relationship with our own bodies. She offers coaching and support for anyone interested in learning more about sex and self-love. So thank you so much, Kat, for being here today. We're extremely honored and can't wait to hear your story. So I'll turn the mic over to you now to kick us off.
Thank you so much. Is my mic on? Can you hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, thank you for such a wonderful introduction and for, inviting me here today. I absolutely love talking about sex. As you probably know, if you follow me on Instagram, I run the page We Are Ungirls. And yeah, I'm just, fascinated and empowered to see more women discovering and reclaiming their sexuality. So more of these events are, so incredible for everybody. So I kind of wanted to talk to you guys tonight about the first time I ever went to an STI clinic, and something I just didn't think about, to be honest. I know that going to the sexual health clinic can be a little overwhelming and can be a little worrying at some points. And when I first went, I went with my best friend from high school, actually. We met back in Glasgow and we had a few drinks and we were like trading stories about, Tinder, hookups and everything. And we were like, maybe we should get a checkup. And sometimes going by yourself can be a little bit scary, especially, we were just 18 or 19 and you think, oh, what are people going to think of me? Are people going to judge me? What is this experience going to be like? So just having a few drinks the night before with my friend and being two women who could just talk openly about casual sex and about sexual health was so incredible, to have a friend that I could share that with. So I was just visiting actually Glasgow. I lived already in Edinburgh at this point, and I only brought 2 outfits with me. Okay, so obviously when I went to the drinks that night, I wore one outfit, it was this cute dress, but I was like, oh, I can't wear the same outfit the second day. And also I had these silly ideas about, oh, this dress is kind of revealing, like I don't really want to wear that to the clinic, what will people think of me? All of these horrible things that you have in your mind about, how people will judge you when you are going to get a checkup, which we shouldn't think, and we shouldn't even judge other people for that, of course, but that was going through my mind as a young 18-year-old girl. So I just wore my second outfit, no big deal, right? I was thinking, you know, about millions of other things, but I was not thinking about what I'm going to wear. So I I went to the clinic the next day, and it was this kind of drop-in clinic where you don't make an appointment and you're basically there the whole day, you know, and they are fantastic establishments. They are like literally the backbone of sexual health. Like, at least in the UK, if anyone knows the Sandyford Clinic, it's so amazing for what they do for people. But yeah, you have to get there really early. So we got there at like 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. And, you know, all I had to wear was a play suit. You know, I don't know, do you have a different name for it in the US or anything? You know, just basically like a one piece outfit, right? So like shorts in the bottom half and kind of this, it was really cute, you know, it was a really cute outfit, right? But it was one piece. Okay, so we sit there, we get there in the morning, we get a number, and you just have to wait the whole day, and you're waiting for them to call your number to get checked. And actually it was kind of a fun experience, because you're just sitting there and you see all the sides of humanity and all the sides of society when you're sitting in the clinic, right? You see all people that you don't necessarily see in your regular social bubble, you know. And actually it really humanizes the whole experience, because you're all there and you're all just there for the same purpose of health, you know. And it's this kind of equalizer, and it was kind of a nice experience, but it was a long wait, right? So we're waiting and waiting and waiting, and eventually my number gets called. And, well, actually my friend's number gets called first, and she goes in, and she has a bit of a problem with blood, seeing blood, right? And she's getting her test for HIV, so taking the blood. And the poor nurses, they're the most wonderful and lovely and understanding people. But they take the blood, and she sees the blood a little bit, or they're trying to find a vein. They're struggling quite a bit with this, and she's just freaking out, and she's having a bit of a freak out with seeing this blood. So she just passes out and falls straight onto the ground and hits her head, and there's blood spreading everywhere, right, from the needle. And it's just like, oh my God, like this is just totally out of control. So I kind of go and help her, and she's fainted and she's kind of needing some support, but the nurses were just so loving and like super caring. So in a way that kind of made me relax a little bit, because we kind of already dealt with the crazy situation, right? So when I went in for my test, I was like, okay, I can deal with this. I've just helped my friend through this. We are women together, you know. And I know that I knew that the nurses were super nice as well. So it was kind of this already kind of a strange experience, but I was ready for this. So I get in, and the nurses are just asking the regular questions, you know, like, have you, you know, had an unprotected sex, of, you know, like all those things. And I was expecting them to just be kind of judgmental, like you think, you know, oh yeah, I have, and I don't want to tell them how many people I've had sex with or whatever. They were just like friends. Like, we just had a laugh about it. I mean, they were giving me advice, you know, like, you know, always wear a condom and all those kinds of things. But they made me feel so comfortable, right? But then came the time to take my bottom half off, right? So they were like, okay, so, you know, just remove your bottom half of your clothes and pop up on the table, and we'll just put a wee towel over you. And then I was like, oh no, I don't have a bottom half. I just have the one half. I just have the one thing. I'm going to be naked, like full on naked, right? I wasn't even wearing a bra with this, okay? Like, I was just going to be naked lying on this table. And, you know, it was already kind of awkward situation. You know, you have to bear everything. You have to think, you know, I was thinking, oh God, like, have I shaved? Like, oh my God, all these things are running through your mind. But you just did not think, don't wear a one-piece outfit, because you are going to lie on that bed naked. And they were so nice about it, but I must admit, they did burst out laughing, and they did admit to me that this was the first and probably only time that somebody had come in just with a one piece. So all I had to wear was this little cropped leather jacket, you know, not a practical item of clothing at all, just something for fashion. And I just had to lie on this little doctor's bed with my leather crop jacket on, just sort of covering my boobs and like with my legs widespread. And you know what, it was actually kind of okay. And it made the whole experience just sort of relax a bit, because they'd already seen the most embarrassing part of they see my whole body, and I realized they see millions of bodies every day. They see people fainting, they deal with people doing all sorts. So all of the worries that I had beforehand, the worries that they were going to judge my sexual history, or they were going to judge my body hair, or they were going to think, what does her vagina look like? All of the things that I was concerned about, I realized those are not things to be concerned about in this situation. And they're actually, the nurses and the people that work in these clinics are like some of the nicest people you will meet. And it inspired me to continue that kind of acceptance and that kind of just love and openness to discuss health, especially sexual health, because most of us will have sex, and we're all here from sex, right? Somebody had sex to have us. So, we have to overcome that shame, because it's one of the most natural things that we have and that we will experience. So if you are concerned about going to the sexual health clinic, which I think everyone has these worries at some point, number one, know that there's nothing weird about your body, and you will not freak out any nurses or any doctors. They have seen everything. Okay, everything. That's their job. Number two, don't worry about shaving or whatever. Like, really, you're focused on just getting things in and getting things out. And they're not looking just like, oh, was that a wax, or is it did she leave? Oh my, is that razor burn? No, don't worry about any of that. Okay, that's nothing to be concerned about. Number three, don't be concerned that they're going to judge your sexual history, because they won't. They will give you unbiased advice. And it's, actually sometimes you just need to go. You need to get over that. Even if you have had unprotected sex, I know the fear, you've done it and you think, oh God, just go, because they are so welcoming and accepting. And it's the feeling of, the safety that you get after that is worth all of the concerns that you have about going. But do be concerned about what you wear if you want to contain some modesty. Don't wear a onesie, don't wear a play suit, don't wear something that is not easy to get off. Okay, ideally a skirt or some trousers. That's good. That's good, actually. Maybe something loose so you feel more comfortable afterwards. But you know what? Even if you do end up naked on the bed like I did, it's just a funny story, and the feeling of safety and relaxing, the concerns are all gone afterwards. So, I think we all have to relax a little bit about it and just laugh about these weird situations. So yeah, I hope my embarrassing story can help anyone else here who might be embarrassed to go. And yeah, so that's my story. Thank you for listening. And yeah, if you want to find out more embarrassing stories, because I tell them all the time on my Instagram page, please follow me if you like that. All right, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kat, for that vulnerable and hilarious story. I think it speaks volumes, and I think I'm so happy you had a great experience. And hopefully for people out there who are just starting to navigate their sexual health journeys, this can be some encouragement. So great way to kick us off. Round of applause all around. If you have access to those like emojis, feel free. Yeah, awesome. So next up, here to undo stigma is the amazing Les Henderson, who will be presenting their story, The Sexcovery of a Black Masculine Woman. Les is the host of a Be a Beacon podcast and the founder of endoqueer. As a Black masculine of center lesbian, her endometriosis journey has been complicated due to the erasure in medical and online spaces. In 2016, she survived a spontaneous lung collapse due to endometriosis, and once this happened, she knew that she had to get out there and tell her story, and create a space which helped others. Her story has now been shared by Vice, Cosmo UK, and she's even contributed to a few medical journals as well as books. So thank you so much, Les, for being here. We are so excited to hear your story, and I will let you get into it.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks again, y'all, for having me on this panel. And I'm looking forward to hearing the other guests and their journeys as well. They pretty much said it, and now I have to squeeze this in till about 8 minutes, which can be difficult. So feel free to share your watch and everything with me. But honestly, what led me here today was to rewind back. I've always been more of a masculine of identified as a masculine of center woman. I've always been the more of the masculine person in my relationships or even in sexual encounters. And even when I began, being sexually active in the early 2000s, I was, especially in the queer space, in the Black queer space at that, we tend to followed a lot of homo heteronormativity, meaning that, okay, the more feminine presenting partner take on what's believed to be more of the woman traits, and the more masculine partner take on the male traits. So there was a lot there, and that all kind of intertwines with me going to the OBGYN and me handling my endometriosis journey. So of course, starting out, into anyone out there in the community that's listening to this today, and you may not quite identify with, you may not look how you identify, or you may feel like you have to take on a certain role. You don't have to do that. I don't know if cursing's allowed on here, but you don't have to do that. Be who you are. Many times, especially when I was supposed to be more of the dominant and masculine partner, many women, condemned me if I wanted to be held, or if I, wanted to, or if because I don't mind being honest, because this is a sexual health conversation. I definitely don't mind, a woman getting more aggressive on me. That's absolutely no problem. But sometimes that would take people by surprise. And a lot of times, I get that, and it's no fault of their own. It's just we were all learning. We were all, we all fell into what society, handed to us, and we followed what we thought we had to do. And so fast forwarding a little, and I would begin visiting the OBGYN for not only pap smears, and this was before I knew what endometriosis was. This was when I just thought I just was an unfortunate person that had horrible periods. And I would go to the OBGYN, and and there would be little comments that were often said. Some of y'all may have heard my story before, but I would go to the OBGYN, and some of the comments were, oh, you're, unless you switch teams, you don't have to come here. You're not, meaning I'm not having hetero sex. So they're like, you don't really have to come here. And I think, my God, how many people have been told that horrible advice and are thinking, oh, I don't have to get a pap smear, or oh gosh, I'm not girly, I don't need to go to the OBGYN. Bullshit. Take your asses and get yourselves checked. I realize there's a lot of discrepancies around that, especially in the trans and non-binary community, where many people, and this is something I've been finding out, especially through work with endoqueer, a lot of people, especially in the trans and non-binary communities, have to actually educate the doctors. It's been times where myself and my partner, who appears more feminine, we go to the doctor and they immediately go to her, thinking she's the one that's there for help and for the appointment. So we definitely have to continue to work on those stigmas. And of course, kind of intertwining, my experiences with the OBGYN with comments, oh, I see we have to pull out the little clamps. Or oh gosh, okay, yeah, can you let me know what that means? If I tell them how I identify, like what is masculine of center. So to any medical professionals watching this today, please begin to get yourselves educated. You're dealing with all types of people in your profession, and many of them, and many people may not identify on the binary. Not everyone identifies on the binary. Like, I personally identify as a masculine of center woman, where I'm still a woman, but I'm just more on the masculine end. And even that, we've made great strides toward it, but there's still work to be done with medical professionals and communicating with their patients, and how they really and how they really communicate. Sometimes it's just been that awkward communication at the doctors, and that just really, that needs to cease. So as I would get more in my sexual journey with discovering, discovering, my role, and, realizing, hey, I don't have to, I don't have to sit here and just, be attentive to the feminine woman. I can get pleasure too. I can pleasure myself. These things are okay. These things are okay. It's okay if you're, in a feminine on feminine relationship, or a masculine relationship, or, whatever it is, like myself. One other thing I'll say is, especially around my sexuality, people often, when they hear lesbian, they think, oh, okay, just all women. But when I really say lesbian, for me, that's not exclusive to just AFAB women. It's not exclusive. It's not exclusive to just that. When I say lesbian, I mean all women, which also includes just everyone, those along the feminine spectrum, trans women, just overall around the spectrum. So that's something we need to continue to be, get comfortable with, is being able to really express our sexualities, not live in these cultures of secrecies. Because when we continue to have the culture of secrecy in our community, in the community especially, it leads to not being able to go, not feeling comfortable to go to your doctor's appointments, medical professionals not knowing our needs and our wants, and how we really need to be taken care of, especially and supported at the doctor, even within our communities, and how we communicate with our peers, how we communicate with things like this, where audiences are watching and and learning and wanting support. So it's definitely important to continue to be more transparent with that. And I found that when I became more transparent and I became true to myself and, okay, my needs, my wants, my pleasures, I was able to better communicate that with my partners, whether they were romantic, platonic, or maybe just sexual, whatever the case may be. I was able to better communicate that with them. Now, fast forwarding to 2016, when you mentioned my lung collapses, that was just a terrible experience. It was like I just completely shut down. And I was a chain smoker at the time. So I really thought, I was like, hell, you know what? You got me. I've been smoking too many cigarettes. But then I would later find out right after the surgery that it was due to endometriosis traveling to my lungs. So that was definitely frightening. But it made me want to get my story, really have my story out there after I came out of my deep depression, and after I would go through the ringer with so many OBGYNs. Many OBGYNs didn't really want to give me the proper treatment I needed, or really listen to me. They just wanted to kind of apply what they thought was right. Now, economically, because this is something a lot of people in the queer community go through as well. A lot of more people in our community tend to be lower income. They tend to give work on donation based services, because again, unfortunately, there's so much bias. Many of us still can't really get get regular employment. So people have to, sometimes do what they have to do. So if you know any queer people, especially, and you see they have a GoFundMe up, pay them for their services, pay us for our, our services, pay us for what we do, drop a donation in there, because a lot of times many people are dealing with that, they have to depend on GoFundMe, Venmo, PayPal, the generosity of the community to live. So we definitely, need to continue to, really progress with that. But because at the time, the person I was seeing at that time, wasn't working. And at the time I, was really hanging on to my day job, and I couldn't, and because I was in so much pain a lot, I was taking off a lot, especially around my period. So I knew I had to do something. I still had to keep us afloat. I still had to be able to, pay my bills. So I agree. I let the OBGYN, give me Lupron. Now, I'm not shading Lupron. If it works for y'all, wonderful. But I'm going to tell y'all, for me, I didn't want to be touched. I didn't even want to hug. I would come home from work, take a shower, and just jump into bed. I didn't even want to be touched. I felt just dry. I mean, literally dry. However you want to take it, just completely dry. I didn't even want it. I mean, you could say I had blue clit going on down there, because I just did not want to be touched. but I was too ashamed to admit that to my partner that I was with at the time. I couldn't believe what was happening. It was like 20 degrees, and I was coming from this little coffee shop near my job with a cup of ice with my coat open, and I couldn't really tell the person I wanted to see that, hey, I'm getting all these aches and pains. Hey, I don't want sex. I think this Lupron shots is doing something to me. Although it's helping me in one way, I don't want sex. So of course, me not being communicative that was also part of why we're not together now, but that's okay. But so definitely if something's going on and you're with someone or just anyone close to you, let them know what's going on. Communication is key. And if they're not, and if they kind of shade you or treat you kind of funny behind you telling your truth, move on and find supportive people. Definitely with the internet and with groups like myself and these other people here today, you could definitely find a community out there for you. But I was just so ashamed because again, I didn't realize at the time I was still dealing with a lot of, of heteronormativity that I had ingrained in myself. Like, okay, it's not okay for me to be weak. I really got to make sure I hold things down. Oh my God, I can't tell them I'm getting blue clit and that I don't want sex. But the more I became open, and that's why I applied a lot of my past and lessons that I've learned. And, of course, going through therapy and other things, I really just began a healing journey to myself, just to be honest with myself and to be honest with who I'm with. So my current partner now, she's very supportive of me, and just we give each other space when we need it. We're just very communicative, which has definitely been helpful. And I mean, honestly, if anybody told me years ago that I would be, on these Zooms telling about my sex life, I would be like, what in the world? No way. But honestly, it's just all about on the patient's end, being communicative with your loved ones and whoever you need to be communicative with. And then on the medical side, on the medical professional side, for y'all to be able to, if you can't put your bias off to the side, get the hell out of the profession and find something where you can just work by yourself. Because you have to be able to really listen to the patient and what they're saying. You have to be like, okay, what is stopping me from listening to this person? Why am I treating this patient different from my other patients? You really have to examine your bias. There's a book I do want to recommend, Unconscious Bias. It's because I think all of us have it. All of us have some type of bias, and it's definitely good to really check that, especially as you apply that to not only yourself but also out into the world, out to society. So those have been kind of keys helping me as far as far as just being honest no matter how you identify it, just living in your truth. I can't express that enough. I'm here talking about my blue clit I had a few years ago from the Lupron, and just being communicative. If it's sometimes you don't want to have sex, you don't want to have sex. If it's time maybe where you were like, hey, I need, let's incorporate these toys. Let's do this, let's do that. Definitely incorporate all of those things, definitely just be able to be communicative with your loved ones, with your friends, with whoever is closest to you. And, on that note, if you have any more questions, I'm not sure how long I've been talking now, but if you guys have any more questions, I think I put in the private Facebook group for anyone, in the queer community dealing with endo and similar illnesses. Even if you want a private email, I put the email there, endoqueer@gmail.com, and, or just, find us on social media, send us a message, definitely open. And and if you want to have a further discussion, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much, Les. You covered so many topics in there. It was
Wow.
really amazing. We talked about gender and identity, community, honesty. We talked about class, so many gems. So we truly thank you. It's really great. So in the similar vein, our next speaker also lives with endometriosis. We're going to be sharing Xtina Del Valle's story and short film, which I'm extremely excited for. I'll let her introduce the film probably with a little bit of a content warning. Our next two stories might be on a bit more of serious notes, and then we're going to pick it back up a bit. But Xtina is an American singer, songwriter, and endometriosis survivor and advocate. She was diagnosed with endometriosis at 23 years old after being told that her symptoms were repeatedly in her head by numerous doctors over years. Shocked and appalled by the complete lack of awareness around this disease, she has since then been an outspoken advocate for the cause on her social media platforms. She plans to continue breaking down stigmas with her words and her art. So Xtina, I'm so excited to have you here today and be screening your film for the first time for everyone. So everyone's in for a real treat with this, and I will now let you speak.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. So I loved what you just had to say about endometriosis, Les. I think you covered so many amazing points. I think that one of the worst things about having endometriosis, besides it being like a horrible, painful disease, is that there's almost no awareness and there's so much stigma around the actual act of like getting tested for it and talking to a doctor about your symptoms. So yeah, basically, I was lucky to find a doctor eventually who was amazing and reaffirmed what I was feeling and made me feel really valid. But up until the point that I was 23, from schools, from jobs, from other doctors, I had just been basically told that everything was in my head and that I just had like a low pain tolerance, which as I'm becoming more outspoken online about this is an experience that a lot of people have, and a lot of people even have a worse experience with that than I do. So I made this short film to kind of capture how dangerous it is to ignore people's symptoms and kind of the fallout from that. So that's what this, I almost said song, but that's what this short film is about. It's called Believe Me, and it's about the dangers of ignoring people's symptoms. And I will say pretty heavy trigger warning for blood if you can't look at that. So yeah.
Amazing. So I will share, and of course, if this is something you are not interested in, you can always just pop off for the next 2 minutes and come back. But trust me, definitely something great to watch. So I will start playing, and if there's any sound issues or anything, just let me know.
Is it because you can't see it with your eyes? Your foolish, fickle eyes. If I took away your sight, cease to exist. If pain was a person, what would they look like? Would it even matter if I told you? Is it your intention to make me feel small? To make me feel crazy? How much do I have to suffer before you admit that I'm valid? How
Christine, you're muted. Awesome.
Yeah, so that's it. I will upload it later, probably today or tomorrow, to my social media. The quality of sound obviously is not as great on Zoom, so I'm sorry if you guys had issues hearing anything I was saying. But yeah, I just feel like that really accurately depicts how harmful it is to tell people, like, especially when doctors in the medical community do it, like, to basically just like gaslight people out of their pain. It's endometriosis and other reproductive diseases are not a joke. And if someone is telling you that they're in pain, you should take that seriously. So that is the main message that I wanted to convey. So thank you for watching.
Thank you so much. Christina, definitely check out the chat. Everyone's giving you major props. It's such a powerful film. And again, yeah, you definitely want to hear everything. So I encourage you all to check it out, and we'll be sharing on the socials and event once that link is up. Awesome. So moving along, we're actually switching up our schedule just a little. So next up, we're actually going to be moving on to Shana, also known as the Herpes Goddess. I'm sure if you're in the sex education herpes space, you've seen her all over TikTok. So Shana is breaking down the stigma surrounding herpes and HSV for women so that they can feel more comfortable being open about their status and proud of their sexuality. She's been featured on BuzzFeed and started the Slay the Stigma movement for herpes positive women. Shana does not teach women how to cope with herpes. Instead, she encourages women to break free from the stigma so that it no longer controls their life, which I love. With the Slay the Stigma movement, she has received over 100 testimonials as a confidence coach, growing a herpes community of over 200,000 followers on TikTok in just a few months. So Shana, we are so excited to have you here with us today and be sharing your story.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. This is incredible what you're doing here for women, period. I'm all about women empowerment and just helping the community out. I'm going to share my story of how I found out I had herpes. So the day I found out I was pregnant, I found out I was herpes. And I'm going to rewind a little bit. I'm sitting in bed and I had something I thought was a razor bump. It was extremely painful. So my boyfriend at the time, I'm like, babe, come look at this. This is painful. This can't be a razor bump. He's like, it looks like a razor bump, but if you're really worried about it, just go get it checked out. I'm in the Army at the time, so I went into sick call and I went to go get my outbreak checked out. The doctor said it was a razor bump. She was sure it was a razor bump, but it didn't sit well with me. I said, I need you to test this. This is too painful. She said, all right, well, if it makes you feel better, we'll go ahead and test it. Weeks passed, I didn't hear from her. So I thought I didn't have herpes. I don't have anything. She tested it, I didn't hear from her. I'm having all the symptoms of being pregnant. Mind you, I don't want to be pregnant. My boyfriend's like, you're pregnant, go get tested. So I went to go get some lab work done. The doctor comes in and she's like, I have good news and I have bad news. What do you want me to start with first? I'm like, all right, give me the bad news. I always want the bad news first. End it off with good. She said, well, you have HSV too. I didn't know what HSV was. I didn't know that you called herpes HSV. HSV sound like HIV, and I don't know much about HIV neither. So automatically I just start hyperventilating. She said, calm down, you have herpes, everyone has it, just don't have sex during an outbreak. That is the only information I got about herpes, was just don't have sex during an outbreak. I'm like, all right, what's the good news? You're pregnant. At the time, that wasn't good news for me neither, so I was still waiting for the good news. I'm in shock now. I wasn't crying, wasn't sad, I wasn't angry, I was just in shock. I go to my car, I call my boyfriend, and I'm like, I'm pregnant. He's excited about that, and I have herpes. He goes, don't worry about it. We'll get through it. I love you. Just come home. We're 9 years apart, guys. So I'm thinking he's older than me. Maybe he knows more. I can't believe he's so calm about it. It wasn't sitting well with me. I started to think, oh, maybe he gave me herpes. That didn't sit well with me. So when I found out I was having a son a few weeks later, I decided to end my relationship with my child's father. Now, I didn't get to deal with my herpes. I didn't get to deal with the herpes stigma the first 2 years of my diagnosis. Also, I was on suppression medication, so I didn't have to deal with my outbreaks the first 2 years of my diagnosis. I was in Hawaii on the other side of the world. I'm from the East Coast, no family, in the military, single, pregnant. The military likes to put all the pregnant women together for physical fitness in the morning. So my child's father was into a new relationship 3 weeks later, very public. He was higher ranking than me, so we had to keep our relationship a secret the entire 3 years. So I'm watching his relationship unfold right in front of my face, everything that I wanted. Again, I was alone, moved out alone, appointments alone, looked at this as the other woman. And when I went into labor, I even drove myself to the hospital, depressed. Had my son, postpartum depression hits. I'm still looking at her profile. I'm still looking at his profile. I'm 80 pounds heavier. My body looks different. My feet grew a half an inch. My boobs are lopsided and bleeding. And I have this baby. I was now ready to put myself out there, but all of these things was going on. And I finally had to deal with the herpes stigma. Herpes makes you feel unworthy. It makes you feel dirty. It makes you feel undesirable. It makes you lose your sexy. You don't feel sexy anymore, and you can't show up as that sexy, confident woman anymore. And I had to ask myself, why am I letting this stigma, have so much power over my life? Herpes is a bump that may or may not come. Majority of people with herpes are asymptomatic. They don't experience outbreaks at all. So the stigma is causing more damage in my life than the actual virus is. Why can't I find my worth outside of the stigma? So in 2017, I decided to go on this self-love journey for myself. I learned that herpes was not my problem. It was everything underneath it. It was childhood trauma. It was things I done threw in the closet and forgot about. It was how I showed up into the world. I have created this persona, this person that everyone believed to be true. That wasn't my reality. So herpes ended up being a blessing for me. It taught me how to love myself. It put me on a path of self-discovery. I was able to learn my body, reconnect with my yoni in a way I didn't think was possible, change my lifestyle, my diet, my outlook, my energy, and it's improved everyone who is involved in my life, my mother, my father, my son, my nieces, my nephews, even their life has improved by me going on this journey with self. I wanted to share this with the women within the community, because a lot of the women within the community don't share the same narrative as me. Women want to kill themselves. Women stay in abusive relationships, in abusive relationships due to shared status. Women are celibate just because they're too afraid to disclose the status. My mission is to break the stigma. My mission is to show women how I was able to overcome the stigma so that they can have that for themselves. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I inspire women to love themselves more. Thank you for your platform. Thank you for letting me share my story. And I hope it resonates.
Thank you so much, Shana. That was a beautiful story, and thank you so much for sharing it with us. I know that your community is making a huge difference in the lives of so many, so I really commend you. Okay, and now next up, we're going to switch to a slightly different perspective and get to hear from actually someone working in the healthcare field. So Janelle King is here with us today with her story, It's Okay to Fire Your Doxus. Janelle is a registered nurse with a master's degree in public health. And during her nursing career, she spent many years educating young women about reproductive and sexual health. She is an accomplished blogger and writer and has contributed to Women's Day magazine, Sisters, from AARP, and The Body, the HIV/AIDS resource. She's been featured on the Your Next Shift, the Femme Focus podcast, and the Be Well Sis podcast. In her spare time, you can also find more about her and reproductive health and wellness on her blog, thenursenote.com. So thank you so much, Janelle, for being here with us today, and we're really excited to hear your story.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, this is such an awesome platform. So thank you so much for letting me share my story. So my story is actually before I became a nurse. I was a young 30-something-year-old. I was actually pregnant with my first child. So my husband and I, we had delayed starting our family for a few years just so that I could finish school, my nursing schooling, so that we could travel and just enjoy being a couple. So when we finally decided to start our family, we were excited that we happened to get pregnant really quickly. So that for us was pretty awesome. So my pregnancy was going along smoothly, no morning sickness, I didn't have any nausea. My only real issue was that I had a major distaste for how it smelled outside. That was the only issue that I had. I lived in Columbus, Ohio at the time, and I just hated how it smelled. I was barely into my second trimester. I was at work at the time. I worked for the state of Ohio. I was working in public health at the time, and I started bleeding. So I recognized, this could possibly be a bad thing. So I did what a lot of people in my position would do. I kind of made up some excuse as to why I needed to go home and kind of left for the day. So, because nobody at the time, it was really early in my pregnancy, so nobody knew that I was pregnant. So I made my way to the hospital, which was right around a corner from where I lived and worked. And I called my husband on the way just to let him know what was going on. And I tried to keep the conversation really upbeat just because he's the worrier of the relationship. So I just didn't want to freak him out too much. 5 hours later and $500 later, after paying my deductibles and copays, I was diagnosed with a subchorionic bleeding, which is kind of just a fancy way of saying that I had some pooling of blood around the membrane that surrounded my embryo. So I was assured by the doctors that I didn't have anything to worry about and to just follow up with my OBGYN. So I actually called my OBGYN and she told me the office, they told me to come in the next day. And full disclosure, I had never met this person before, this doctor before. This was my first appointment with her. I was actually scheduled to have my first prenatal visit a few days later. So I picked up the phone and went in to see her that day. And I specifically picked this provider because I wanted somebody that looked like me. I was very intentional in finding a Black female OBGYN just because I thought, and I still kind of believe that, in my opinion, that I wanted somebody who could truly understand the complexities of being a Black woman. So I did my thorough research and I said, yes, this is going to be my person. So the day of the appointment, my husband and I went into her office. She came into the room and she greeted us. She had a very warm face, doctor, very warm face, very pleasant demeanor. She did appear a little bit distracted, so that kind of threw me off a little bit. I kind of explained to her why I was there, and it was decided that I was going to undergo a transvaginal ultrasound. So she lays me down. I get undressed from the bottom down. This cat for you, I was wearing something that appropriate, so I only had to take my bottoms off. And then she did the ultrasounds, and she kind of told my husband and I in a matter-of-fact way that she didn't see a heartbeat. So she, again, in a matter-of-fact way, and I guess that's kind of her past personality. For me, being a first-time pregnant, this is my first time kind of going through this process, I just found it off-putting. She was like, you should expect a miscarriage. A miscarriage is imminent in a few days. She kind of exited the room, so my husband and I are just kind of staring at each other. No words are being exchanged at the time. And then we went home. And so later on that evening, as expected, my miscarriage began. I began to feel this like just intense pain. It was the worst pain that I've ever experienced in my life. There was nothing I could do to kind of relieve it. So my husband, I didn't want him to touch me. I didn't want him to talk to me. You know, I was just kind of writhing around in pain. I remember laying on the floor in my condo, just curled up in a ball in the fetal position because that was the only thing that I could think of at the time. The pain was so intense that I eventually like fell asleep. So a couple hours later, I had woke up and I went into the bathroom, and true to form, like everything had passed. I didn't have any more pain. I kind of explained everything to my husband, so we just kind of took a moment and kind of reflected on everything. The next day, we went back, I think maybe 2 days later, we went back into my doctor's office for the follow-up visit. Um, and she looked at me, but I could tell that she didn't kind of remember why I was there. And so I kind of had to explain everything to her, like, this is what happened, this is what you told me to do. And I just remember during the discussion, I disclosed like that was like the most intense pain that I had ever felt in my life. And so she's kind of stops me mid-sentence and she was just like, oh, I didn't prescribe anything. I didn't prescribe any pain meds for you. And so I was kind of taken aback by that. And granted, this is before I became a nurse. So I didn't even I myself didn't think of taking any like Tylenol or anything in my house, but I didn't know. And you know, hindsight is always 2020. Like it's kind of standard practice to prescribe something for somebody to ease the pain, whether or not they want it in terms of going through a miscarriage. So I thought to myself, like, so I went through that whole experience, balled up on the floor, just writhing around in pain when I didn't really necessarily have to be. And again, pregnant for the first time. This is the first miscarriage for me. So I was just dumbfounded by her actions or inactions at that time. And so right then and there, I knew that she didn't deserve to be my provider. Like, this is not the person for me. Because if she was able to miss something to me that was very small and could have helped me, then what else could she be missing the next time around? So I did what most people do. In essence, I fired her. I said, like, you don't deserve to be my physician. I never went back to her. You know, I gave, for medical standards, like ratings are big things. I gave her like a terrible rating. I told all my friends to avoid her. And so the second time around when I got pregnant, I really did my due diligence. In essence, I interviewed my provider. I made sure to ask all the important questions. I got a sense of kind of like her practicing principle and her philosophies around like care and what they did. And so I say all this to say, be empowered. Like, if you ever find yourself in a position that, you know, something feels off, you don't feel like you're being heard, you don't, your provider's like just kind of dismissing what you're saying, um, that's your chance. Like, you do not have to stay with that provider. Fire that provider, sis. Like, step away, because you deserve the best healthcare. You deserve optimal treatment. And your input is extremely valuable for your overall healthcare and your outcomes, your health outcomes. So that is, and these stories that you guys were telling me earlier, all the other panels, like everything resonates. Like, I've heard them all before, and I try my best not to be that provider, but I always tell myself and all my patients to advocate for yourself, because if something feels off, it definitely is. So you deserve to be heard, and you deserve the best healthcare.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Janelle, for sharing that really vulnerable story with all of us and reiterating the importance of patient and self-advocacy. That was really, really great. So we're at our last speaker, everyone. It's been a really amazing panel so far, and everyone's stories have really been building on each other. So finally, we have Jillian Curry, who's best known for her activism on Instagram and TikTok at Queens of Eve. She'll be sharing a bit about her gynecological journey today, with cervical erosion, splitting with sex, vulvodynia, and vaginismus. So after years of gynecological problems and never finding answers, Jillian turned to the internet to share her story. It took her 4 years to find a solution for just one of her problems. And after a minor surgery was complete, she decided to share her answers with the world. She didn't want anyone else to be searching endlessly on Google for answers that they would never find. She started to post on Instagram about her experience, and that's when she became hooked on women's health. She now uses her platform to help advocate for vaginal health and share her own story as well as those of her followers. Queens of Eve is now 2 years old and has built a really amazing community. And she really just wants to help others speak up, share, and storytell. Thank you so much, Jillian, for being with us here today. We are thrilled to hear your story.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is my first event, so very honoured to be here. So yeah, my name is Jillian. I'm 27 and I am in England. Apologies if some of the words I use are English. I know you have different references sometimes in the States, so bear with me. But yeah, so I started Queens of Eve after just, I think, coming up to like a decade now of gynae problems. I was sexually active at the age of 16. And first of all, it was just reoccurring thrush infections all of the time. My first experience with a UTI. I have actually had a couple of STIs, actually from partners too. So even when being in a relationship, it is still important to be safe. They were unfortunately being unfaithful, hence why I contracted something. But yeah, still important just to completely know your background. So yeah, I hadn't had an easy ride at all. There was always something going on, and I just kept telling myself, why is it always me? Didn't feel completely comfortable speaking to my friends about some of the stuff because I was quite a young age and they never seemed to have any problems. So it kind of just made me feel more and more isolated. And then 2015 comes around, and that is the kind of beginning of my worst 2 or 3 problems. So I had a cervical ectropion. Now, what that is when the cells on the inside of your cervix move and sit on the outside, and they can cause symptoms like bleeding during sex, or for me, my vaginal discharge changed quite drastically, and it was really distressing. I wasn't in pain, but basically what happened is it went to an extreme amount. It was very watery. It was to the extent where I would soak through a sanitary towel and denim jeans. It was that heavy. So I had to wear a sanitary towel all times of the day, every day. And that also made my skin very irritated. It was always damp. It was always pressed against something. And it was just a nightmare. I think I was 22 at the time. I'm now 27. So as a really quite young woman, I felt really unattractive, not sexy at all. I had to wear huge, big pants that usually you wear when you're well into your kind of menopause years. I didn't feel attractive. I didn't want anyone to touch me, and there was nothing on the internet. So everything that came back was just, you've got thrush, you could have an STI, could be bacterial vaginosis. And I had been swabbed and tested for everything. Nothing was coming back as positive. So it just made my journey more hellish. My doctor, I mean, I would not like to slate doctors. We're very fortunate in the UK to have the NHS, meaning we have free healthcare, unless we obviously want to pay to have private. But some of the advice I have been given has been very dismissive and has made me feel like it's all psychological, which through starting my page seems to be a very common experience for women. And since doing more research into women's health and hearing loads of other people's stories, it's become quite evident that we're not taken seriously, especially as a younger age, I find. So she basically said to me, some girls get more discharge than others, which I already knew. And I was trying to explain, this is not normal for me. It's changed very significantly. So I was tested for thrush and everything, and it came back negative, but she put me on 6 months worth of thrush treatment anyway. Did not need this, and everything I was trying was getting me nowhere until I ended up getting a smear test. I think you guys call it a pap smear over there, at the age of 24, which is a year earlier than you're allowed to in the UK. It's 25 here, just to rule out cervical cancer, because that could be part of what was going on. Thankfully, it was negative, but through the smear test, the nurse saw a red patch on my cervix, which I don't know how no one had noticed in the 4 years, because you can see it quite clearly with the naked eye. But that was my problem. So cutting a long story short, I went and had it frozen off, and I went back to normal, but 5 months later, it came back worse. Now, I didn't know until I got to my next gynae that it was caused by the pill. And I also didn't realize how common actually an ectropion is until I started to talk about it. And because of the hormonal imbalance, that is how it happened. So at this next appointment, I actually had a Leeds procedure done, which is a little bit more extreme than the freezing. And I also stopped taking the pill because I could not deal with this any longer. It was just not a nice way to be living. So yeah, that was 2018 in November. And since then, I don't have an ectropion anymore. It's not come back, which is amazing. And that's what spurred me on to share my story and try and stop another woman from experiencing this for so many years and not getting anywhere. Now, unfortunately, around the same time, 2015, and I don't know if this is due to the abusive relationship I was in at the time, or I have no idea, but I started to tear with sex. Doesn't matter who it was with, doesn't matter how much lube I used, doesn't matter how relaxed I was, what size they were, I would cut open at the kind of bottom of the vaginal opening. And obviously that was painful, distressing. I couldn't actually have sex because it was just as soon as it entered, it would split. So I couldn't carry on, I couldn't finish. And it was just, I mean, to be told that, you know, you might not be able to have sex again pain-free is just not a nice way to be living. So I obviously went to the doctors. I have been given ointments, steroids, so many things. I had a biopsy taken for any possible skin conditions. Nothing was coming back with anything. I've even had doctors say to me, well, you could just do foreplay. You don't have to have sex, which was probably the worst advice I have had to date. And just kind of made me feel even more like, one, would that be said to a man? And two, do I really have to sit here and accept to not have sex again and enjoy it? Being a very young woman still, age of 23 is when this happened. And unfortunately, I still have this issue today, and I don't have a diagnosis for it. I have been diagnosed with vulvodynia alongside it. So this is where my nerves are basically confused and they associate touch with pain. And it feels like burning. It feels like acid is on my skin. I can't wear thongs. I can't wear sexy, like lacy underwear. It's so painful. Even going for a walk, sitting down, kind of feels like little razor cuts everywhere, but there's nothing visibly to see. So yeah, it's been really horrible. There's not really a lot they can do about that. They prescribed a local anesthetic ointment, but that kind of masks the problem rather than solving it. But there's no kind of explanation as to how vulvodynia comes around, and there's no cure and there's no knowledge, kind of similar with a lot of female health problems. Just there doesn't seem to be a lot of research there. So I have no idea of my current condition because we are in a pandemic and I have not been able to test having sex with somebody for quite some time now. And unfortunately, the longer I go without, the worse it gets because I need to have it kind of used to the stretch and the sensation of touch. So yeah, it's not doing very well for me right now with coronavirus, but hopefully when I can maybe find a little bit more of something that helps me. But yeah, so I turned to Instagram. I didn't think anyone would be interested in hearing about my vagina, to be honest with you, but I'm now here 2 years later, talking to loads of women across the world, and it's surprising how common it is. A lot of women have painful sex. A lot of women have some sort of condition. Even with the ectropion, I have found a lot of women with the same situation. So yeah, if I didn't speak up, I wouldn't have met these people. I wouldn't have maybe reassured others, and I wouldn't have the community I have now, and I wouldn't be talking to you. So yeah, I'm very happy that I have shared my story and encourage anyone to do the same. I know it can be daunting, embarrassing. I didn't think I'd ever be doing this, but I am, and I don't think anything of it now. I've become so used to it, and all of my friends say that I managed to bring up vaginas in every conversation we seem to have. But that's great. So yeah, over half the world's population has a vagina, so there's nothing to be ashamed of. And yeah, that's basically me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Jillian. I think your words are incredibly powerful, as is your story and sort of your demonstrated strength and resilience with it. I know that we've sort of covered so many different topics in this panel, but I think It's so interesting to hear how we all felt sort of so alone until you start talking. As someone who lives with chronic yeast infections, totally relate to your story on many levels, and really grateful for your community as well as all of everyone's communities who are here today. So that wraps us up for the storytelling portion. I just want to thank everyone again for sharing their stories. In so many areas of our lives, our bodies, our medical conditions, or our sexuality can be really heavily stigmatized or made to feel icky or dirty or inherently shameful or wrong. And it's people like the six of you who are making a huge difference and strides with breaking down these stigmas and helping others become more comfortable in their bodies. If any of you listening now feel inspired to share your stories, we encourage you to reach out to us via Medical Herstory and the Safe app to connect, whether that's publishing a piece for the website or participating in a future event like this. We really encourage you to get in touch. We're now going to have a short 10-minute Q&A for anyone who has questions for the panelists. So feel free to type them in the chat, and Bridget will lead that for us now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate Tori's appreciation for sharing your really lovely stories and your truths with us. To me, it's just the most inspiring thing, and it really creates a sense of community, not just among people who have had issues with their medical health, but really across all identities. Like, we all have health, and it's, I think, one of the most precious things. And so to have such struggles with figuring out what is wrong or getting the proper care that you need is, I think, unfortunately, a common theme. And so I think it's really great to share our experiences here so we can hopefully learn from that and prevent it. It seems like everyone that talked today has not only had issues accessing healthcare in the past because of possibly accessibility or affordability or uninformed providers, but also maybe experienced some stigma from their healthcare providers, whether it was slut shaming or just complete ignorance, maybe, about, as Les spoke to, identities across the binary and beyond. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and, like, basically see, how have you all felt after sharing your stories in a public manner? Some of you have been doing this more, and some of you have been doing this less, but, like, what are some of the benefits for you personally, but also what do you hope people can get from your experience, and what do you aim to do, I guess? If anybody wants to start, they can, but I'm happy to also ask specifically. Janelle, I was really wondering, actually, for you, your story was, I thought, really moved me, frankly. And I've had similar experiences, not with a miscarriage, but with doctors where I've repeatedly advocated for myself and been ignored. And I finally got to the point where I had to just go to another doctor. Yeah. And I want to know a little bit more about, like, what is your goal? What do you want? What with your platform, ideally, and, like,
So I talk a lot about vaginas, similar to a lot of people up here, just because, you know, I work in that field. And for my platform, a lot of the times what I do is just to provide information, because in my experiences, I've worked with a lot of younger adults, so like teens through their early 20s, and they just had a lot of misinformation just about sex, sexuality, birth control, just a lot of misconceptions. So I use my platform to just provide facts in kind of a fun, upbeat manner. And I've also found, I guess more recently, just because I've been talking about it more, which is kind of the great thing about doing stories, is that just advocacy. Like, I think people are very empowered by advocacy and me sharing my stories. This is the first time I think I've ever shared my story about my miscarriage. So, like, just presenting that information and showing people, like, yes, this may have happened to you, but it doesn't have to happen to you. There are other avenues, and it's okay. You know, we hold physicians and people in the healthcare practice at high esteems, but it's okay it's okay to walk away if they are wrong, if you feel that they're not serving you in a good way. So I just always, because I guess maybe because it's coming from me and I'm a nurse, I'm like, it's okay to just say, you know, this relationship is not working. I'm gonna have to find somebody else.
Yeah. Do you have a specific question that you would ask, maybe as it relates to, like, a doctor that you're trying to vet, especially for, like, maybe a reproductive or women's health issues, a way to, like, kind of help or give a guidance to somebody who maybe is having issues of the same kind of thing?
And it's hard to say, like, I always tend to tell my patients to ask questions, like, if providing scenario questions, and they can use themselves, provide a scenario question, and from their response, you can figure out whether or not that's somebody that you want to provide care for you. For example, like when I went to my midwives next time around, I've asked specific questions like, okay, what do you do about, when do you start talking about, I don't know, like C-sections, or what do you do if somebody's 40-week gestations and they haven't given birth yet? And so her answers, so she told me, like, we don't talk about C-sections until you're at least 40 weeks. We provide a lot of more natural remedies to try to get your birth going before we go to pills and medicine before, we would try like a couple of like nipple stimulation or giving you making use like some teas before we would talk about using actual medicine. So for that, me and my personality, I knew that was somebody I wanted to work with. So I think just providing scenario-based questions and then gleaming what your provider is telling you from their answer will give you a good indication. At least for me, that's how I do it. Like, it gives you a good indication whether or not this is going to be a match. Like, if you know in your heart that you would prefer to go a more natural route before they start talking about medicines, and they're talking about medicines before they actually, or if they talk about natural remedies at all, that may not be the provider for you.
That's awesome. Something I noticed, obviously, with both of the endometriosis stories and with the herpes story, really everybody across the board, is that you guys experienced pushback on your lived experiences from medical professionals. And I was wondering, I guess, if you had any questions for the community that, or that you found through your experience with endometriosis, experience with herpes, experience with everything, like that you wanted to share, like that would help people who might be experiencing similar symptoms or diseases or anything like that. If maybe Xtina, I was wondering, like, what, and then Les too, with your collapsed lung, like, are there any advice that you can give people who are experiencing kind of the same thing?
Yeah, go to someone who believes you. If there's a doctor telling you like, no, your pain tolerance is just too low, or no, it's in your head, that's probably not the right doctor for you. It is something that like awareness needs to be raised so much for. And the surgeon I went to, who's Dr. Cameron Najat, who's like really paving the way in this specific field, he told me like 1 in 10 women have endometriosis, and that's pretty common. And it would be a lot more if more people knew about it, probably, because I don't know why, but it's very, very common. And so I think that find someone who listens to you and believes you. Anyone who's gonna sit there and gaslight you and tell you your pain isn't real, honestly isn't worth your time. You know what you're feeling. Another thing is, a lot of younger people message me on Instagram and stuff saying, oh, am I too young to have this? No, reproductive diseases don't care how old you are. They can happen to anyone after they get their period. So reproductive diseases don't care how old you are. They don't care who you are. They don't care what your family thinks of you. They're not biased to acting on your body and wrecking your body. And also endometriosis specifically can spread anywhere in your body. So I personally had it in my spine, and it was causing me back problems for a lot of my life. And I didn't even put that together until after my surgery. So find someone who believes you.
Yeah, and to answer, and I agree with both Xtina and Janelle, don't just take one doctor for granted and think you have to just stay there. If they're not giving you right answers, if y'all aren't meshing well, find another doctor. You don't have to put up with it. I mean, my God, if I'd stayed with the OBGYN that said, hey, I don't have to come there, and if I really just believed her, I wouldn't have known about anything going on with me. I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. So definitely do that. And I wanted to address a question someone had regarding how did I find out that the endo had traveled to my lung. Well, literally I was hours after, hours after I woke up from the anesthesia, and the doctor came in and showed me, and showed me the picture of my lung and showed me the endo, and was like, it came up through my diaphragm, and then it just came up through the lungs. Like, Christina had it in her spine. Many other people have had endo in all parts of their bodies. It does travel, but that's how they found out. They showed me the little picture, and they showed me, how it traveled, to my lung. And many studies show that 50% of non-cis patients have to educate medical professionals or when they go to the doctor. And after a while, y'all, that gets so exhausting. So sometimes it's easy to just say, hey, just go to the doctor, not realizing for some people it's trauma around going to the doctor. It's like, on one hand, yes, we need to go to the doctor. We need, our medical professionals, but at the same time, people need to realize it's still not as simple, especially for many in the LGBTQIA plus community, to just, hey, go to the doctor when there's so much trauma. Sometimes when there's so much exhaustion, because you go there and you have to deal with the medical staff and their bias, or you have to, because there's been many times personally for me where I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna let nature take its course. I'm tired of going through all this, but I know it's important for me to live. It's important for me to be seen, and it's important. So that's why I started endoqueer. That's why talking on this today. But both sides have a responsibility. Patients to be more communicative, and for everyone else involved in the patient's lives to listen and be there. But we definitely have to continue to have these conversations. We definitely have to continue to have trainings and to really bridge the gap, but the gap between patients and medical professionals as well. And then just in general, just trying to get everyone get their bias in check.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We have a question from Khadijah. I'm not sure, Khadijah, if you wanted to direct it to anybody in specifically, but she was wondering how you went about healing after traumatic experiences that happened, particularly with your health.
Well, I mean, I'll go. I was angry for a long, long time. Like, I felt like I was abandoned. I was sitting in the hospital, just upset and mad. And then I became depressed and going through all these mood changes, especially with the Lupron shots. But I realized I was isolating myself. I was isolating people. I was, pretty much getting rid of people around me. People around me was like, okay, I don't know what's going on with her. She's not trying to talk to us. She's just out here with an attitude. So I realized, you know what? I also have to take charge. I couldn't just, and this really happened. I was just sitting on my couch at this particular time. I had became addicted to Coca-Cola and gummy bears. So I was like, instead of me just sitting on the couch, feeling sorry for myself, eating a bag of Haribo's and guzzling down Coca-Cola, I knew I had to do something. I was like, okay, I got to get back out here into the workforce. I got to reconnect with friends. I got to reconnect. I can't even be there for other people, and I can't even let people know what's going on with me. It's time for me to really be serious about seeking help. So not only, and I'm still in therapy, just working through not only medical trauma, but also just other, past traumas. And then also just, meditation has helped. I've been introduced to the Shine app. That's helped me. So it's just little daily things I do, even if it's just taking a little walk, even if it's, even after this, I'm going to probably, just kind of relax. It's kind of sunny outside, so I'll probably just go outside for a little bit. But just little things, little self-care things. It's definitely nothing to take for granted. So it could just start simple. You don't have to go yell at a mountaintop. But it could just be, dedicating at least 10 to 15 minutes per day for you only. Long showers, baths, however you want to do it, long drives, whatever it is that you do. Try to have a little time for yourself.
Yeah, I don't know, Sheena, are you with us? Because I know you had such a positive experience from it, but I think that was such an interesting way to view a trauma and kind of grow, I guess, through the fires of your tribulations into something that's a blessing for you and your family, which I think is a really beautiful way to experience that lived trauma for yourself. Did anybody else have any, specific suggestions or things that helped them cope after they got a diagnosis or experienced their medical trauma?
I don't think I've been through anything as intense and powerful as the women who've talked tonight and people who've talked tonight. But I know just from hearing everyone's story and also through telling bits of my own stories through Instagram, is that telling your story is so cathartic and healing, not just to you, but to everybody else. Like, you'd think, like, just everyone spoke to me, I didn't think anyone would care about my vagina. People do, like, actually they do. And you think you don't make an impact in the world, but you can take this, in some way, this terrible thing that happened to you, and you have this power to like turn that around and use that to heal other people. And that changes that energy, it's like, because at the end of the day, it's everything that happens to you is some kind of energy, like you take it in and you have to, you can decide how you want to move that energy and you want to use that energy. And I think using your story to educate people, because everybody is correct, there is so little information about women, about any reproductive issues, which is insane and blows my mind and makes me angry. It's crazy that people have to.
Oh, Kat, you cut out.
I think it's crazy that people have to learn on Instagram about things that are so impactful in our lives. Like, I'm sorry, but I don't think anything to do with penises they have to deal with like the same issues. But I think anyone who's listening, who is still trying to heal or who's going through something, like, even if you just tell one person and you open up and you share, like, if you're ready to, you are helping them and you're giving them a support network and a platform to express themselves and heal as well. So I think, like, that's what's beautiful about these storytelling events, and just anybody who has a platform, or tell a friend, like, because it's just the messages you get back, like, oh my God, they just make me cry sometimes, like, just put good energy out into the world. And it does help, I think, for me anyway, at least. Yeah, I don't know if anyone relates, but
I personally do 100%. And talking about we have a question about how to get out stories and experience and like talk about your stigmas. I know working with Safely, we've had issues with using anything relating to sex. And I know the algorithm has changed a lot recently, particularly for sex workers and people who deal with sex educators, nurses. I mean, anything with healthcare or sex in it is like, immediately we have a downgraded engagement. And I wanted to know if you all had experienced, I'm sure you have, similar things, and how you deal with that on your profiles. And are there any like ways or other than supporting, obviously, and following and saving and liking, that you would encourage people to engage with your content?
I guess I can start. I've experienced shadow banning every single day, like pretty much for the last few months, which is just where Instagram doesn't show your stories or your posts to new people. And I just have to thank everybody for sharing, because sharing is kind of the way that you can overcome a little bit of the algorithm messing it up. So if you share it on your story, and it just it helps out immensely, and it shows our work to new people, and that's incredibly helpful for at least for me. Yeah, I don't know about other people.
Yeah, for me, I think I've been very fortunate to be able to partner with a lot of different individuals who may not be doing the same work as that I do, so that kind of exposes what I do and kind of my content to bigger audiences. And it's been people who just do stuff just about like self-care in general. Like, I've had a lot of people I've partnered with just doing self-care, and they're like, hey, I've seen your video doing that, like, I've done a live and I saw your video, so would you like to come on my platform or come on my podcast to just share your information? I think that really helps as well.
Does anybody want to specifically like promo themselves. I want to give everybody an opportunity to, like, are you writing a book? Do you have another event? Do you have anything that you want to talk about? Because this is for us lifting everybody up together so we can all support each other at the same time. And also, does anybody have any questions for anyone else that spoke, perhaps? I just want to do a last call because I definitely want to be here for everyone.
Definitely reach out. I put my information in this column over here to the right. Definitely don't be shy, reach out, sign up. I'll be on a few other panels coming up soon, which is online as well. So definitely, just definitely reach out. If you're too shy to ask a question here, you can email it into endoqueer@gmail.com. The information's there, or chat me if you need anything else.
I have a little masturbation course coming up. It's still kind of related, I guess. Yeah, I think if you're feeling ashamed of touching yourself, or about pleasure, or just accepting your right to experience pleasure and your own body, that's something I'm going to start focusing on more on my platform. So yeah, reach out if that's something you're interested in. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us and for listening to our stories. Thank you.
I try to get back to all my messages on Instagram. So if you have something that you want to privately talk to me about, you can go ahead and do that. And also, I'm going to be uploading my short film to Instagram and YouTube, and releasing a lot more music and video content this year. So if that's something you would like to see, make sure you follow me. I put my Instagram, it's just my name. It's one word, it's just my name. Same on every platform. And make sure you follow everyone in this panel, because they are amazing and are always spreading really wonderful information. Thank you.
Hi, so I have started a forum on my blog. So not many people have signed up yet because it's quite new, but basically I don't know if you have Mumsnet or know of Mumsnet in the States, but basically like a big forum thread, I guess like Reddit, but obviously nowhere near as huge, where anyone can just talk about any of their conditions. To be honest, I've got loads of endo followers, I can't pronounce it, adenomyosis, followers, cervical cancer sufferers, everything, just a safe space basically for everyone to chat to each other and reach out and maybe help other people out of their problems, because I haven't experienced everything firsthand, so I can't always be the best person to give advice for everything. And then also I have been creating quite a bit of noise on Vagisil and FemFresh, which is the UK brand. One of my TikToks went fairly huge, but basically just want to make the awareness that we shouldn't be using these products and their marketing is all lies. We should just wash with water. And it actually outrages me that brands like this target women and profit off their insecurities, and there's no equivalent for men. So the more noise we can share, the better. Get them banned.
Amen.
And I'm on Instagram and all socials at The Nurse Note. You can check out my blog at thenursenote.com, where I share information just about reproductive and sexual health. I love questions, so please feel free to DM me. I have a couple different articles that are coming out for different platforms, and then later on in the year, I think I'm doing another podcast with one of my good friends, so stay tuned for that.
Great. Just a quick note, if anybody's on Clubhouse, a Sex, Bodies, and Health Club that I would love you all to follow, join, and we're looking for people who want to host. I'm doing talks, trying to do weekly talks with people, so please reach out, DM me. I'm drop my information there, but it's at Bridget E. Bridge or Bridget Garwood. You can search for me and I can make you a member. But I would love to have all of your voices contribute there. And if you need an invite, you can also message me, and I have a couple that I can give away. So.
Awesome, everyone. So we're going to wrap here. I have some nice one final slide for you all. So thank you for sticking around to the end and the wonderful Q&A. To get 10% off your next STI test, if you are in the United States, you can use the code SAFELY. We also encourage you to check out on the Safe app Instagram page. They have a great PSA going with its August, where you can also log any questions you may have. In terms of Medical Herstory, if you enjoyed tonight's event, we have a comedy night coming up next Friday, so another way to tell stories. And again, if you want to share your story, we're actually running a story competition where you can win $100 up until March for sharing your story, whether that's in written form, video, audio, etc. So we really encourage you to check out our platform, keep sharing stories, connecting, and we really appreciate all of you helping us undo stigma.